I know your presence here means the world to this family today. So we're so grateful that you're here. Carol and Joe, Elaine and David, Ken and Rhonda. I look out on this crowd and I think to myself, you know, this is just the kind of crowd that would inspire a great speech from your dad. He would love this moment. I mean, he would step up here and he would regale us with stories, and he would charm us with his wit and his wisdom and that special trademark warmth that we all love so much. Well, I should tell you, as we planned this day, our first thought was to invite everyone, all Air Force members past and present who loved your dad and who were inspired by him. That was our plan. But the Alamo Dome wasn't available. And so we scaled it back to those present in this room who are just a small representation of all the thousands whose lives were touched by Chief Bob Gaylor. And how appropriate to celebrate his life here in the spiritual home of America's airmen. I love that. And to all of you, welcome home. It's good to have you here. Well, Chief Gaylor called me several years ago with an unusual request. After he explained to me that he was not dying, he asked me if I would conduct his funeral. Well, besides being one of the greatest honors of my life, I didn't want to be the first person who said no to Chief Gaylor. I didn't want that on my record, you know. I think he must have anticipated this moment when he sat down with a tablet of paper and a pen. And he wrote out exactly what he wanted this day to be, and he wrote out his own obituary. And I'd like to share that with you. Now, you realize when he wrote it, he didn't know the date. And so he put a blank in there for us to fill in the appropriate date in the blank, and I'm going to do that. So here it is in the Chief's own words. You'll recognize these words. On January 17, 2024, Chief Master Sgt of the Air Force No. 5 accepted God's personal invitation to be the featured speaker at Heaven's annual award banquet. That had Chief Gaylor all over it, didn't it? In attendance will be Bob's parents, Lester and Alberta, and sister Shirley, brother Lynn, his wife of 59 years, Selma, son Michael, Edward, and thousands of relatives, dear friends, and fellow airmen. As always, the Chief's comments will be humorous, inspirational, entertaining, and possibly too long. He goes on. Bob was born in Bellevue, Iowa, and moved with his family to Mulberry, Indiana, where he completed high school with 17 classmates in 1947. During World War II years, Bob was active in Boy Scouts, achieving the life rank. He entered the Air Force on 8 September 1948 on a 3-year enlistment and remained on active duty 31 years, retiring on 31 August 1979. I want to share just a brief passage of Scripture with you now. They're Jesus' words to his disciples, to his friends, just before he was going to leave them, and they were upset that he was leaving. And I thought to myself, those are the perfect words for today. They fit so well for us today. Listen to them. Here's what Jesus said. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God. Believe also in me. And I love this part the best. In my Father's house are many rooms. And I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me so that you may be where I am. Would you pray with me? Lord, we've come to say thank you for the amazing gift that your servant Bob Gaylor was to his family, to his friends, and to our nation. Help us today, Lord, to comfort his family, even as we celebrate his life and lift up the faith that he had in you. Be with this family who are grieving the loss of a beloved father, brother, grandfather, and uncle. Lord, I pray that your promise of a great reunion someday will comfort each one of them and give them your peace. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Chief Gaylor asked that we sing the Air Force hymn. And so to honor that request, our own senior airman Emily Marshall will come and lead us. She'll be accompanied by Staff Sergeant Adam Walker on piano. You'll find the words in your program. Now, after the Air Force hymn, I'll ask that you would please be seated and then direct your attention to the screens for a beautiful memorial video that was produced by the Robert D. Gaylor NCO Academy right here at Lackland Air Force Base. And so now would you please stand as we sing together. Airman Marshall. You may be seated. I think the highlight of this service is getting to hear from some of the people who knew Chief Gaylor the best. First, the current Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Joanne Bass, will come and speak. And then representing the formers, Chief Master Sergeant number 12, Eric Binkin, will come and speak. Thank you, Chief Bass and Chief Binkin, for coming. What an honor to have you here today. And then finally, representing the Gaylor family, Chief Gaylor's son, Lieutenant Colonel retired Ken Gaylor, or as his daddy called him, Kenny. And after Ken speaks, we're going to hear Chief Gaylor's favorite hymn, sung by Senior Airman Marshall. But first, Chief Bass.
Hot fries. Name on the mailbox. Attitude, aptitude, and opportunity. Name another airman you can identify with a single phrase or a collection of words that has left a lasting impact on this Air Force, our airmen, both past and present. There is only one. Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Bob Gaylor, our beloved number 5. We've heard his stories, we've learned from them, and we've been inspired by his words. On his Wednesday with the Chief, shared just 4 weeks ago, Chief Master of the Air Force Gaylor made it a point to talk about and emphasize the importance of character. He was always teaching, he was always sharing, and most certainly always inspiring. So today, as we all gather, may we reflect on the character of CMSAF Gaylor and the fact that we are all so much richer because of him, and may we celebrate a life well lived. For me personally, I know we are not supposed to have favorites, but he was mine. Number 5 was my go-to trusted advisor and wise counsel. He embraced me like family, as did Elaine, Carol, and Kenny. When I needed perspective in true number 5 fashion, he would share a story. And his stories were lessons that I needed to hear, so simple, yet so true. His stories were also incredibly detailed. He remembered everything. I remember a time when we visited and he shared a story about when he met Selma. He shared about when they got married, the details of their honeymoon, to include the exact hotel that he stayed at. He remembered the room number and the exact cost of the hotel that night. I don't know about you, but I get excited when I remember my anniversary. He even remembered the dates of when he visited bases across the globe. It didn't matter if it was 50 years ago, he knew the dates. And he often remembered the names of the people whom he had a privilege to meet. Who else was amazed at his uncanny memory? In any case, he had a gift. He certainly had a gift of a great memory, but he also had a gift that many of us in this room and across the world have felt. He had a special gift to make us all feel so very special, like we were the only people in the room, and certainly like we were part of the Gaylor family. I'm certain that his upbringing and growing up as the second of 8 children in Indiana helped shape and set the character of the man we would be privileged to call our chief. In fact, if I can just share with you a very brief timeline of number 5's time in our Air Force, Chaplain, I'll fill in some blanks, as you mentioned. I'll start from the beginning of his airman journey, where Bob Gaylor's character stood out amongst the rest. It started when he showed up for basic military training in September 1948, a year after the birth of our great Air Force. And in true Bob Gaylor fashion, he said what probably nobody else on earth has said, that our basic training experience made him feel like a kid at Christmas. Said no one ever but Bob Gaylor. After 13 weeks of basic training and a short return home from leave, Private First Class Gaylor arrived at his first duty station, Waco Air Base, Texas. When he arrived, he was offered 3 choices: to be a cook, a firefighter, or a military policeman. He chose military police. After 8 months in Waco, the motivated PFC Gaylor was promoted to corporal, and he was finally selected to attend MP school. Upon his return, he was promoted to buck sergeant. And just a few months later, Buck Sergeant Gaylor volunteered to be a permanent gate guard. Even after his buddy shared with him, "You don't want to do that, Bob. You have to be sharp. You have to shine your boots." And again, in Bob Gaylor fashion, he replied, "If I'm going to be a cop, I want to be top of the line." And that he was. One day while Buck Sergeant Gaylor was working the front gate, Secretary of the Air Force Symington happened to be visiting the base. He had the opportunity to open the door of the secretary. And from that one simple act, he called his mom and he said, "Mom, I opened the door." Number 5 shared with me that very particular experience, opening the door for the secretary, and how it made him feel like the greatest cop on earth. And he never forgot that feeling. In fact, that experience and how he felt is one of the reasons why he never turned down an opportunity to take a photo, to do an autograph, and to chat with airmen across the globe. That is a character of Bob Gaylor. Now, coming on the end of his 3rd year enlistment, Sergeant Gaylor had a choice to make: re-enlist or be involuntarily extended. Today, we would call that stop loss. However, he chose to re-enlist. And in 1942, a small contingent of air police from Waco were reassigned to reopen Laredo Air Base. It was during this assignment at Laredo where Bob met Selma. They married in 1953. They had Carol in January of 1954 and Eddie in January of 1955. And in 1956, he was promoted to Master Sergeant. They promoted people pretty fast back then. And at that time, Master Sergeant was the highest enlisted rank in the Air Force. So he decided he was going to apply to be a warrant officer. But his application was returned. He's mentioned something to me about bureaucracy. But in any case, it didn't happen because we were waiting for the 2 new super grades that would start 2 years later. And in July 1956, Elaine was born. Number 5 often joked that the Air Force came to their rescue and sent him on a tour to Korea after Elaine was born, because at that point, he and Selma were averaging a child a year. So off to Korea he went. He served well, he served honorably, and as his time in Korea was coming to an end, Master Sergeant Gaylor told the clerk he wanted to go to Lackland, to which the clerk told him he can guarantee that he will get him to Lackland. Number 5 asked how, and the clerk simply said in personnel fashion, "Trust me." Sure enough, he gets orders to Lackland. He reports to the cop squadron. The first sergeant said he wasn't on their roster, so he directed him to the Air Police School. The Air Police School said, "You're not on our books either." But they took a closer look on his orders and they pointed out, "You have a T next to your name." Little did he know that that T meant he was going to be a TI, and that he volunteered for it. It turns out that Personelis in Korea volunteered him for it. So again, in Bob Gaylor fashion, while others might have tried to get out of an assignment, his positive attitude, his character, led him to simply say, "Forward, march." His time at BMT proved to be even more special when the youngest in the Gaylor clan was born, Kenny, in August 1959. A few years later, Master Sergeant Gaylor was ready to be a cop again and was assigned to Tachikawa Airfield in Japan and promoted to Senior Master Sergeant in 1963. After leaving Japan, he went to Columbus Air Force Base, and it was during that assignment when Senior Master Sergeant Gaylor was selected to attend his first PME experience, the NCO Academy at Barksdale Air Force Base. He earned the Honor Graduate and the Academic Award, and because the cadre was so impressed with Senior Master Sergeant Gaylor, 3 days after returning to Columbus, he received a call to come and fill a role at the Academy. Of course, he took the position and he moved his family to Barksdale. However, after teaching just 2 classes, the escalation of the Vietnam War caused all of the academies to close, and Senior Master Sergeant Gaylor transitioned back to being a military policeman. This is often how Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force Gaylor began sharing his lesson on attitude, aptitude, and opportunity, specifically on how a setback can often lead to unexpected opportunities. It was in 1967 that he received orders to Korat, Thailand, and while there, he was promoted to Chief Master Sergeant. And in Thailand, Chief Gaylor would shake the hands with the first Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Paul Airey. Chief Gaylor left Thailand with orders to Grand Forks. However, when he came back to the States, he found out from Selma that they were not going to Grand Forks. Instead, he was going to be an instructor at the newly reopened SAC Academy at Barksdale. The spouse network, even back then, was alive and well. Number 5 credits the late SimSAF number 6, James McCoy, for the instructor opportunity because McCoy was the one who filled the positions for the newly opened academy. I have no doubt that Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force McCoy knew then what we all know now, that the incredible character of Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force Gaylor would make him the perfect fit to teach and develop a generation of airmen. Following that, in 1970, at the request of then Lieutenant General David Jones, Chief Gaylor became the first senior enlisted advisor to 2nd Air Force. After receiving his 4th star and becoming the USAFE commander, General Jones would once again request Chief Gaylor to join him. And in July 1971, Chief Gaylor and his family moved to Germany. Chief Gaylor established the USAFE Command Management and Leadership Center, a 60-hour course of instruction for non-commissioned officers. He hired 3 people on his staff, and they traveled throughout Europe teaching effective speaking, equal opportunity, and leadership management. He continued those duties until his selection as the USAFE Senior Enlisted Advisor in 1973. A year later, Chief Gaylor received a phone call from the Pentagon informing him that the now Chief of Staff of the Air Force, Jones, wanted to move him again. This time to travel around the Air Force talking about leadership, a unique position that had never existed before and does not exist now. So Chief Gaylor and his family moved to Randolph, where he was given blanket orders to go anywhere in the Air Force to talk about leadership. In fact, in 1975, Chief Gaylor traveled 265 days talking about leadership at base theaters. As his reputation would build on a base, he'd go from talking to about 100 airmen to hundreds of airmen 2 times a day for 3 days straight at all of our installations. And somehow, during those busy visits, he managed to find time for a round of golf with the late Simsaf McCoy. And during one particular round of golf, a runner came out to the golf course to find Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force number 6 and let him know he had a phone call. For some of our younger folks in here, back then we did not have cell phones. Number 6 took the phone call and returned back to the course, and he told Chief Gaylor they want them both to interview to be the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. We aren't sure who the they is. I got a phone call one day from they as well, so I can only imagine how the rest of that round of golf played out. And it was on 17 July 1977 that Chief Gaylor was notified of his selection as the 5th Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. He served in that position as our Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force from 1 August 1977 to 31 August 1979. And during his tenure as a Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Chief Gaylor shared his knowledge and he shared his love of leadership to airmen across the globe. The Air Force also happened to open 70 leadership schools during his time, secured overseas sponsorship for dependents of airmen of all ranks, and he championed the Air Force's first maternity uniform. Even post-retirement, Chief Gaylor never stopped taking care of airmen. Development, care, and commitment were in his blood. Even during the height of COVID and in his 90s, Chief Master of the Air Force Gaylor was determined to still reach airmen. He did it with his weekly Facebook series, Wednesdays with the Chief. Chief Gaylor served our airmen and our Air Force for over 75 years. He wore this uniform for 31 and continued for another 44, no doubt, still feeling like a kid at Christmas. Our Air Force is better because of Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Bob Gaylor. He is a national treasure. He is a legend. He is an American airman, and his legacy will live on in all of us. His name and legacy will also live on in the Robert D. Gaylor NCO Academy. The Robert D. Gaylor Airman Leadership School. The Gaylor Flight at Basic Military Training. The Gaylor Dining Facility at Joint Base Charleston. The Robert D. Gaylor AFSA chapter at Lackland. The SIMSAF Robert D. Gaylor Air Force Aid Society grant. And lodging suites across the globe, to include one of his favorites, Gaylor's Gulch at Elmendorf. But in good Bob Gaylor fashion, number 5 told us at the last AFSA, it's not bragging if you actually did it. And he has done it. So number 5, until we meet again, I know where I'll find you. Your name is on the mailbox. Thank you.
Well, I told Kenny Gaylor the other day this is kind of a surreal moment, and it really is to be here and doing this. But I'm privileged to speak on behalf of the former Chief Master Sergeants of the Air Force, and all of whom have shared a special connection with Bob and the Gaylor family over the years. Last May, I think Bob, on his 93rd birthday occasion, was kind of feeling his own mortality, and he sent out a reflective letter to some of his closest friends. In it, Bob gave us the 25 words that defined the foundation of his life, his values, his personality, and his style. Very appropriate words for this gathering: faith, family, and friends were also included. At the end of the letter, he added the postscript that said, "It's been a great ride. No sad songs for me. Smile." And what a great ride he had. That is exactly what Bob would want us to do today, for all of us to be smiling at what an awesome life he was blessed to have and reflect on his enormous contributions to this great Air Force and this great nation. So I had my first encounter with Bob Gaylor about 50 years ago, 1974. I was at Bergstrom Air Force Base in Austin, Texas. I was a newly minted staff sergeant. I think I had staff sergeant on for about a minute. I came out of the ops building and I was running to the parking lot. And as I was sprinting past the wing commander's office, the door opened up and two uniformed gentlemen appeared before me, and I ran right into them. I stepped back and I thought, oh my gosh, I just took out the wing commander. Oh my gosh, I'll never live this down. So I came to attention. I said, "Airman Benkin reports as ordered. Please don't kill me, sir." I looked and it was two chiefs. Now I'm embarrassed. I can't believe that I did this. I saluted two enlisted people. I started, begging for forgiveness, and then I said, I knew in basic training that you never saluted enlisted people. I learned that lesson. Please don't shoot me. Please don't kill me. And Bob Gaylor reached around and he hugged me and he said, "Son, if that's the only thing you screw up today, things are going to be just fine." So I always tell people, I embellish this story because 3 years later, he became the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. So I would embellish the story and say, "Yeah, me and Bob, we used to have conversations down there at Bergstrom Air Force Base. And he's going to be a great Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force. You just wait and see. That guy can really talk. He can do all kinds of stuff, so just watch out for him." And for all you youngsters, I think Bob kind of had the Midas touch, if you will. I think when he put his arm around me and gave me some positive words, I think that was kind of the Midas touch that said, "Hey, you're going to be successful in your life. You're going to be successful in your career." So for all you youngsters that have hugged Bob Gaylor, and there's a lot of you out there, things are going to be just fine. So we all know that Bob had an uncanny ability to take something that was very simple and turn it into a life lesson. Something as simple as an old movie like 12 O'Clock High with Gregory Peck. We heard him give a 45-minute speech one time on just one scene from that movie. Anything could be turned into a life lesson. And sometimes you received a personalized life lesson that's meant just for you. And because Bob was a straight shooter, there might be a little bit of tough love that's included in that. So I'm up at D.C. and I'm hosting the former Chief Master Sergeants of the Air Force, and Bob Gaylor and I are taking a break. And we're sitting there by ourselves, and he said, "Is there anything that you really dislike about D.C.?" And I said, "You mean besides the obvious politicians and things like that?" He said, "Yeah, is there anything else you dislike?" And I said, "Yeah, Bob." I said, I hate the traffic. I said, "The traffic drives me crazy." I said, "The construction, the people don't know how to drive." And I said, "It takes an hour and a half to get home after you've been in the Pentagon all day." I said, "I don't like that at all." And I looked at him and he's kind of smiled and he said, "Well, Chief," he said, "that's on you." He said, "That's on you." He says, "You choose to be miserable in that traffic." He said, "When I get in traffic, I think of blissful things. I might write a speech. I might think about my family. Life is bliss. I don't let it bother me." He said, "That's on you. Life's about choices, Chief. You got to make the right choice." So now every time I get stuck in traffic, I look over to my right, and there's that blissful Bob Gaylor living rent-free in my head. And he'll be there forever, and Bob, I'll never charge you a dime. Being the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force affords you thousands of treasured moments and opportunities to develop friendships that are going to last forever. That can be said of our endearing relationships with the Gaylor family. Bob will soon join his bride Selma over at Fort Sam. We all remember her very fondly for her humor, for warmth, and her charisma. A great American patriot, she had a deep love and passion for our Air Force and for this great nation. Our time spent with Selma over the years was as most precious and treasured by all of us. Bob also warmly welcomed the formers into the Gaylor clan, and moments spent with Kenny, Carol, and Elaine and their families over these many years have been especially precious and treasured by all of us. And we want you to know that we sincerely appreciate your friendship, and we hope that continues for many years to come. We love you all. You know that. Finally, folks who are part of the greatest generation and the boomer generation, that would be you and me, Chaplain. We'll remember another Bob who did so much for our men and women in uniform, so much so that he received the enlisted force's highest honor, the Order of the Sword. His name was Bob Hope, and he traveled and entertained troops serving in combat zones around the world, but most notably were his dozens of trips that he made to Vietnam. When Bob Hope would sign off at the end of each show, he would always sing a song called Thanks for the Memories. And today, on behalf of Chief Bass and the former Chief Master Sergeants of the Air Force, I would like to say thank you, Number 5. Thank you for all the memories and for all that you've given to our great Air Force and our great nation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Kenny Gaylor, Chief Gaylor's youngest child. On behalf of the entire Gaylor family, we thank you so much for attending today's service honoring Chief Master Sgt of the Air Force Number 5, Bob Gaylor. We as his family knew him affectionately as Dad, as Gramps, as Great Gramps, as Brother Bob, and as Uncle Bob, while many of you knew him simply as the Chief. His family understands Dad was many things to many people, and so we appreciate your attendance today. First off, the Gaylor family would like to express our deepest gratitude to the teams of the Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force Honor Guard, Porter Loring Mortuary, and their wonderful professional staff, and especially the 502nd Air Base Wing for handling every aspect of this special day, which helps us pay tribute to our dad. So again, thank you very much for all your service, and thank you very much for attending. Now, before I go on, I got to tell you that Gaylor men are not known for brevity. Dad often related the story of speaking at Hurlburt Field, Florida, at their Special Operations Wing banquet. After he spoke that evening, the wing commander's wife said, "Oh, Chief, I could just listen to you talk all night." And the wing commander said, "I think we just did." So while I will try to be brief this morning, I know you understand our family's need to relate to you, because we're pretty sure we know why you're here. Obviously, we want to honor the Chief and pay tribute, but I think there's a larger need for us all to be here. I think it's for the memories. I think it's for the stories that the Chief told so well. He had a unique gift for relating a message, and it's all because he wanted one thing. He just wanted to make us think. He wanted to make us think about things that are important in our lives, like how to provide good service, how to care for others, how to be a good team member, how to feel pride in your organization. Most importantly, Dad wanted us to bring out the best in ourselves. The Chief gave us examples of those important messages in stories that he would tell audiences around the world. You know the stories. Allow me to tell you a couple. First story. Dad was working in his yard one day, as he often did, He loved working in his yard. The neighbor drove by, rolled down the window, and hollered out to him, "Doing some yard work today, huh, Bob?" "That's right," Dad said. "I notice every time I drive past, Bob, you're out here working in your yard." And Dad said, "Well, I enjoy it." "I don't know anyone who works in their yard as much as you do, Bob." "Okay," Dad said. "You know, Bob, you can hire somebody to do this yard work for you." Dad said, "I know, but like I said, I enjoy doing it." By now, Dad had enough of that conversation. He was ready to go back to his yard work, but the neighbor persisted. And Dad told me the neighbor began to analyze him. He said, "Bob, I just can't imagine why someone would work so hard in their yard. Why do you do it?" And right then, Dad said something spontaneous and quite clever, for which he became very well noted and widely quoted. "Because my name is on the mailbox." Because my name is on the mailbox. That's pretty powerful. So simple, yet so powerful. The Gaylor family experienced the meaning of that story firsthand last year. Many of you know Dad contracted a severe infection last May that almost wiped him out. And within 2 days, we thought we were about to lose him. He didn't want to go to the hospital, even though the harsh infection really warranted direct medical care to have any hope of surviving. But we respected Dad's wishes. He simply told us he did not want to die in a hospital. If he was going to pass, he wanted to pass at home. We understood and we honored Dad's request. We called in hospice care. We really didn't know what else to do. We wanted to help keep Dad comfortable, so they helped us. In a somewhat act of desperation, we contacted his cardiologist, Dr. Charles Holler at Wilford Hall Medical Center here at Lackland Air Force Base. Now, I have to tell you, when I made that phone call, I fully expected Dr. Holler to urge us to take Dad to the emergency room. That's where he needed to be. I truly felt without a visual exam or without lab work on his blood or any tests on Dad's weakened heart, we would be told to get him to the ER. I came back from the phone call and I saw the look of anticipation on my sister's and my wife's face. And they said to me, "What did he say?" "We need to get him to the ER, right?" He said, "Take him to the ER, that's what we really need to do?" I said, "No, that's not what he said." They looked at me puzzled. "What did he say?" I said, "He actually asked me to give him a little time to do some research and he'll get back to us." "That's what he said?" I said, "That's what he said." Now you can only imagine at that point in our desperation what that response from Dr. Holler did to provide a family some hope in a time of utter hopelessness and deep despair. From that day on, Dr. Holler, in a very low-profile manner, became available for Dad's every medical need. He responded to our texts and calls after hours. He contacted us on weekends. He called us while he was on leave. And he saw Dad on a continuing basis until his passing. The Gaylor family is convinced that Dad was given 8 months' time he never would have been able to enjoy. And believe me, he did enjoy. So here's the question, right? Dad would ask, why? Why did Dr. Holler provide that degree of attention? Like I said, we could have been easily told, "I strongly urge your family, get him to the ER where we can see him, where we can examine him." That's what we expected to hear, nothing more. So, why did he do it? I can tell you it wasn't for money or recognition or any perceived pressure. You know why. Because for Dr. Holler, his name is on the mailbox. When Dad would tell audience the mailbox story, he would ask them a question, remember? What would he ask? That's right. Is your name on the mailbox? Dad was talking about accountability, about pride, and about ownership. Do you have it, he would ask? Is your name on your unit's mailbox? How about in your home, in your neighborhood, raising your kids? Remember, the chief just wanted us to think. He didn't want to tell us how to act. He wanted you to think. He wanted you to think about putting your name on the mailbox. Dad had so many great messages about the importance of providing good service and the importance of the right attitude. Do you remember the story of Dad driving down to Laredo to speak to the National Association of Banking Women? He arrived early and he stopped at a hamburger stand because he hadn't eaten lunch. His talk wasn't until later that evening. While he was at the hamburger stand, he witnessed a young boy delivering hamburgers and French fries. The man behind the counter was running the hamburger stand. Remember how Dad described the boy's deliveries? He would say, "This kid was running." He said, "I'm not talking about loping or jogging." He said, "I'm talking about starter block, firing pistol, Olympic-style sprinting." When Dad got a chance to talk to the boy between deliveries, he started a conversation with him. Conversation went something like this. Hi. What's your name? Juan. How old are you, Juan? 11. You work here, Juan? Yes, sir. Every day after school from 3:30 to 5:30. And what would your job be, Juan? I do the deliveries here, sir. Where did you take that last order? He said, to the drugstore around the corner on Salinas Avenue. Dad said, you were really running with that delivery, weren't you, Juan? And Juan said, I always do. Dad loved that answer. I always do. Dad thought that's a great answer. He asked him, every order, Juan? Yes, sir. That fast? Yes, sir. Up and back? Yes, sir. Dad had him poised for the big question, right? Why? Why do you run that fast? And that young lad looked up at the chief, cocked his head, and said, because people like hot French fries. And the chief said, I guess you're right. Dad admits the response from Juan really didn't hit him until later that night. He had finished his talk. He was driving back to San Antonio, had a chance to review the day, and he remembered the response. People like hot French fries. Juan had the answer. Once again, the Gaylor family experienced the meaning of that message in these last 8 months. Dad's health was diminishing. We knew that. He remained very active, but he needed assistance. He still had things he wanted to accomplish. He still had audiences he wanted to address. He still had messages he wanted to broadcast. He still had friends he wanted to visit. So to our rescue came Mr. Cody Kirksey from the 59th Medical Wing. And Cody, without any fanfare, met us for every appointment, provided every wheelchair, picked up every prescription, and left us wanting for nothing. He didn't have to. Once again, there was no extra pay, no extra recognition. So why did Cody help us in that fashion? Because he knew the answer Dad told us in the story of Juan from Laredo. People like hot fries. Once again, Dad would ask you, the audience, a couple of questions, right? First question, is that true? Do people like hot fries? Sure they do. Dad used to say, when your Aunt Gertrude comes to visit from Buffalo, New York, you don't say, get in the car, Gert, we're taking you to a place that serves cold, soggy French fries. So, of course, it's true. People like hot fries. Then Dad would say, the next question I'm going to ask gets a little tougher, right? And here it is. Do you deliver hot fries? Do you provide the highest level of service you possibly can? Do you try to make it a point to make people feel good, feel welcome, feel like you're there for them, feel like they're part of the team? It's something we should come to expect when we're dealing with any aspect of customer service. That's what Dad believed. We should expect and deliver hot French fries. If you don't receive it from a vendor, from a merchant, from a service provider, you can ask them like Dad did, do you know Juan from Laredo? And when they look at you like you're crazy, you can say, well, he delivers hot French fries. Then you can walk away feeling magnanimous, which Dad always said was an officer word. He didn't know what it meant, but he liked that word. Yeah, Dad liked to laugh at himself. He encouraged us kids to learn to laugh at ourselves also. Don't take yourself too seriously, he would tell us. In high school, I got to tell you, I wasn't the best athlete in school. I made the junior varsity basketball team, but I didn't play very much. But I liked being on the team. Yeah, we loved being on the team, didn't we, Willie? One day after practice, I said to my coach excitedly, I said, hey, Coach, my dad's going to take me this weekend to get some new basketball shoes. As I walked away, he said, Gaylor, yeah, Coach, tell him not to spend too much. Listen, Dad and I laughed about that episode for years, and he began relating that story to audiences all over because it makes the point so well. Don't take yourself too seriously. Take your job seriously, he used to say, but take yourself lightly. Learn how to make humor and laughter a big part of your life. That's what the chief did. He loved to laugh. He loved to smile. He would often say, laughter is the sunshine of the soul. You can feel it today. It's fantastic. So I'll leave you with this thought. When you recall Chief Bob Gaylor and celebrate his life, remember to think, remember to smile, and remember to laugh. Thank you so much on behalf of the Gaylor family for coming to share time with us today. God bless you all.
Chief Gaylor used to say, when I don't know what to say, I say, wow. Wow. My goodness, I look out on this room, it's amazing. You know what? I think there are more chiefs per capita in this room than in any crowd I've ever been in. There are a lot of chiefs here. But I think you would all agree with me. Chief Bob Gaylor is the chief of chiefs. Say, how do you know that? Well, Jesus said it like this: whoever would be chief among you, let them be the servant of all. Chief Gaylor took that to heart, and he never, ever stopped serving. He retired from the Air Force in 1979, but the Lord said, but wait, there's more. And so then he served with USAA for 16 years. And when he retired from USAA, the Lord said, but wait, there's more. And the good news is that on January 17th, 2024, the Lord said, but wait, there's more. I received a handwritten Christmas card from the chief this past December. Okay, I'm bragging now. Here's what he wrote in there. Chaplain Page, it's my favorite time of the year. The birth of Jesus, music, lights, food, and thinking of dear friends. I'm living with my son Kenny now, still able to drive. If you say so, Chief. And live independently under their watchful eye and the Lord's loving care. I love that. Well, 5 weeks after he wrote those words, Chief Gaylor slipped away peacefully in his sleep on Wednesday, January 17th, there at home with Ken and Rhonda. Do you remember Jesus' promise that I shared earlier? He said, in my Father's house are many rooms, and I go to prepare a place for you. Can you just imagine the joy of falling asleep in your son's house and waking up in the Father's house? Yeah. That's a beautiful way to go. Now, you know, we don't like to think about our mortality, even though we know it's true. This day is coming for all of us. And if we were to think about our mortality, I think we would all agree, you know, when I go, I want to die like the chief. At home, at age 93, loved by your family, respected by everyone who knows you, no regrets, and most important of all, with a reservation in the Father's house, a room prepared, waiting for you. So here's my message today. If you want to die like the chief, you got to live like the chief. So in Chief Gaylor style, I'll use 3 of his powerful F words to describe just how the chief lived. How many of you heard his famous 12, let's see, what do you call it? My 12 most powerful F words. So maybe when I get to 93, I'll have 12, but today I've got 3. That's all I got. The first F word that describes Chief's life is he loved his friends. Jesus said this, he said, "Greater love has no one than this, and he laid down his life for his friends." Now, most of us will never, ever risk our lives on a battlefield. But you know what? We can still lay down our lives for our friends, just like Chief did. What I mean is that Chief did not live for himself. He lived for others. God gave him this remarkable gift, maybe a singular gift of being able to connect with people with his warmth and his ability to encourage people and his ability to build others up. He would speak and we would listen and we would laugh. And then he would touch our hearts with a story about a boy named Juan running with hot French fries. And we'd never forget it. Chief loved his friends. And here's the good news. Chief's circle of friends included every single airman, past and present. And I'll always be grateful I stood in that circle. How about you? Yes. And Chief never failed to give us his best. He always delivered the fries hot to us. Every single encounter. He never stopped serving. He never stopped laying down his life for us. So here's my encouragement to you. Live like the Chief. The second F that describes Chief Gaylor's life is he loved his family. As I talked with Carol, Elaine, and Ken, and I should tell you, each one of them told me in private that they were his favorite. As I talked with Carol and Elaine and Ken in preparation for this service, I just loved the stories of the Gaylor family. I love how you love each other and how you enjoy being together. It's just a beautiful thing. So here's what I would say to you all. Listen to me. With Miss Selma by his side, she was an equal partner in this. With Miss Selma by his side, Chief Gaylor accomplished amazing things. He rose to the top of his chosen career. And as long as there is a United States Air Force, he'll never be forgotten. But listen to me, his greatest achievement was not becoming Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. His greatest achievement is sitting in this room. Look at that beautiful family. They taught them to love the Lord and love each other. Selma and Bob Gaylor built a beautiful family. There's nothing better than that. So my encouragement to you today, live like the Chief. The third F that describes Chief Gaylor's life is he lived with faith. He lived with faith. The past 6 months, the Chief was living with Ken and Rhonda. And they set up a monitor in the chief's room so they could hear if he needed anything at night. And at night, they could hear him in his room saying his prayers out loud. And they would go on for some time. And he was saying, "Thank you, Lord, for another day. And thank you for my family." And he would pray for them, each one by name. And he would say, "Lord, your will be done." And then he would sing himself to sleep, singing his favorite hymn. Maybe he was remembering the days when he and his brother John sang in their father's choir at church when they were boys. But in the night from their room, Ken and Rhonda would hear him singing, "And he walks with me and he talks with me." What does he tell you, Chief? "And he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known." Boy, there's a way to live right there, walking and talking with the Lord. You want to die like the chief did? Loved by his family, respected by all who knew him, no regrets, and with a reservation in heaven? Then you got to live like the chief. So again, in Chief Gaylor style, let me ask you a question. How can we be so sure that we have a reservation in heaven and that life goes beyond this death of the body? That's a great question. Listen, with a mortality rate of 1 out of every 1, that question should fascinate all of us. Well, Jesus showed up at the funeral of a friend named Lazarus and answered that question for us. An eyewitness tells us that when Jesus showed up at this funeral for Lazarus, and when he saw the grief of the family, and when he saw Lazarus' 2 sisters, Mary and Martha, grieving, he cried. Jesus cried. He wept. Imagine that. Jesus, the Creator who put on our uniform and came and lived with us so that we would see and know what God has always been like, cried at a funeral. The manliest man who ever lived cried at a funeral. He wept. What does that say to me? Family, it says to me, God is not some distant force untouched by your grief and what you're feeling. Nor is he an angry tyrant who's waiting to hammer you for something you've done wrong. But here is one who cares about your grief, who loves you and cares for you. It says that God cares about what you're going through right now. And some of you are going through hard stuff right now. God cares. But Jesus did much more than sympathize that day. He revealed a great truth that day, standing at the graveside of his friend. And I want to share it with you now because it's a game changer. It changes everything, especially on a day like today. And here's what he said. Jesus said, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me will live even though they die." And he looked at Martha, the sister of the deceased, and he asked her, "Martha, do you believe this?" And what is perhaps the greatest statement of faith in all the Bible. Listen what this woman said. She said, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God. Here's another question. Perhaps you are asking, why should I believe someone who makes such an outrageous statement at a funeral? Well, what if that person told them to roll the stone away from Lazarus' tomb? And what if he called for Lazarus to come out of the tomb? And what if the man who had been dead and buried for 4 days walked out alive? Would you believe him then? The people who were there that day, they believed. Let me keep going. And what if that same man would die on a cross for us and walk out of his tomb alive 3 days later, just as he predicted? Would you believe him then? The eyewitnesses did, and they were many, and so did Bob Gaylor. Well, I'll never be Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force. I've given up that dream. It's never going to happen. But you know what? I can live like the chief so that one day I'll be able to die like the chief. Loved by my family, respected by those who know me with no regrets, and most of all, with confidence in a Savior who loves me and who's prepared a place for me. Well, let me just close now. Thank you all so much for your patience. Let me just close now with a final word to Chief Gaylor's 6 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren, because that's where he was so invested right now. Now, I believe at a Gaylor family Christmas gathering, Chief Gaylor got all of you together and pulled out a flip chart. Am I telling the truth? Yes, he pulled out a flip chart and he gave a briefing to his grandkids and his great-grandkids on life and leadership and customer satisfaction or something like that. Whatever it was, I know it was wonderful. It was in true Gaylor style. What if Chief Gaylor could give you one more flip chart briefing? What would he say? I think I know. I think point 1 would be, I love you so much. I am so proud of you. Find a great purpose and give it your best. Stick together. Stick together. And finally, put your faith in the Lord and follow him all the way to the Father's house. Grams and I will be waiting. God bless you all. Amen. Thank you. But wait, there's more. Well, there's a song, right? A song our Air Force family sings whenever we get together. It's a rousing song that we love. And you guessed it, Chief Gaylor put it on the list. He wanted us to sing this song. And so let's stand together and sing it one more time for the Chief. Give it your best. Thank you so much. On behalf of the Gaylor family, let me say thank you all for coming. I know some of you came from very far distances to be here, and it's so greatly appreciated. I'm going to ask Senior Airman Marshall to sing once more for us, one more song for us. It's a great old hymn we love. It's called How Great Thou Art. Let me let you be seated. Why don't we do that? Thank you. And after she sings, the music will continue, and then the ushers will come forward to direct you when your row is to exit the building. So if you'll follow their direction, I'll appreciate that. And then as you move out of the chapel, if you would stand on either side of the walkway there to honor the chief as the honor guard and as the honorary pallbearers carry him and prepare for his transition to Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery. And you're all invited to join us there for full military honors. But please be in place at the assembly area there at Fort Sam Cemetery no later than 1 p.m. If you're a DOD ID card holder, bus transportation is available to and from the cemetery, and you can catch the bus at the Finkston Reception Center. And so our final song of the service, Senior Airman Marshall. Thank you.